All right, so here's the deal. Your new Beetle is leaking on the floor of the passenger side. This happens to be an '09 Beetle. The cool thing about all this, if you see this mess that I've made, is that you don't have to make this much of a mess. I found out that when you wash the car, it was leaking and it was dripping. You can see how wet the mat is, but it was dripping on the mat. And when I pulled all this stuff apart, it was coming from a couple of areas that you can see here. There's a little bit of water in there. There's some water up here, but it was coming from the blower motor. And how it was doing that was your drain holes get clogged up. And that's step one. So step one on these new Beetles, some of the other videos I've watched say, hey, why don't you just pull the cowl off? So this cowl, it seems to be glued to the windshield, so it does not come off. I was able to get this piece off here, this underneath cowl support, but you don't even have to take that off. What you need to do is get a vacuum and a long air blower and get up in these corners and blow out all of the debris on both sides. Get your vacuum, and you can see there, if you see that little white light shining through down in there, that's one of the drain holes. So there's one there, and then there's another one that comes out. If you get adventurous, you can take this apart like I did, but it comes out right there. But the reality is that's inside the car. It's kind of a weird design, but what I did was I took the wheel off and I took the wheel well cover out, and I cleaned all that out because there's a bunch of debris. The debris ends up being up in here. So let's go inside and take a look at that. The real problem with this car was that this whole area here, where the air inlet is for the system, I think they call this the cabin filter. There's a little bit of a plastic filter here. It's not really a regular filter, but this whole area was full of leaves and dirt and dust. And the other thing was that this whole cabin filter assembly is held on by those two. There's a nut there, there's a nut on the other side. They're 10 millimeter. And there's a rubber gasket underneath it. And I don't know what happened to this one, if it warped over time or it just failed. But when the water comes and runs down onto the cowl, it goes into this area. And especially with the angle this car is at right now, all the water pools over here, and then eventually it's going to drain out the side. So what you need to do is pop the dash apart. The main centerpiece, you pop that off. Going forward, it pops out. There's all these screws in here, and then there's these other panels that pop off. There's videos on YouTube of how to get to the cabin filter on a Bug. That's what I watched. It's essentially a couple of screws, and you pop off the dash plate, and then underneath there are additional plates that cover this area here. And they're just Torx screws. Get the plate out, clean this mess up, make sure your drain hole is clear on the side, and also your drain holes underneath the cowl so that the water can go into this area and then out the side drain hole. So that's how it seems to flow through the system here. What I did was I completely removed the cabin filter, and I don't know if you can see or not, but I laid a tremendous bead of silicone around this thing. You can actually see there's some water in here right now because of the angle, but it's not leaking anymore. So that is how you fix it. Again, all you really need to do is get up underneath the cowl. You don't have to take the whole cowl off, but you got to blow it out, get up underneath there, make sure the drain holes are not stuck. So if you go, and that was the mess. Just all these leaves. I mean, I used these towels to soak everything up, but that much came out of that area. It was a disaster. But if you can get into this area with a long air blower and air compressor and you can see, we can see the drain hole there. Make sure that drain hole is clear. That allows the water flow from the cowl drain hole down into that area, which then goes into the car and then out the side. All right, that's the workflow. So get under there. I mean, you can loosen up the cowl. You can take the wipers off like I did. You can get up underneath there with a vacuum, air blower, whatever you need to do. Get it clean, get it cleaned out. I actually ended up taking this lower panel out. There's a 10 millimeter here, 10 millimeter nut there, 10 millimeter bolt over there, and up under here there's some clips, and there's a gasket around the end of it. I have to bolt it back on. You can still see it's loose here, but get that off, and you can get in there a lot easier if you need to. But if you don't want to, you don't want to go through that trouble, just get up, pull the cowl gasket off, get up underneath there, clean it all out. And the other thing I did is, even though it wasn't leaking, I did both sides. I don't know what that is or where it goes to. Could be a wiring harness, could be something for the engine, but I sealed around that as well. You can see I cleaned it up and sealed around that. So I'm in here now. I figured I might as well get it done while I'm in here and prevent a problem down the road, so it's not leaking on this side. All right, guys. Hopefully this helps you, or at least gives you an idea of why you're getting a puddle on your Bug, your New Beetle. This one's an 09, and it is on the passenger side into the footwell. And happy car fixing.